Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my crazy neighbor demanded I sell her my property. When I refused to do so, she claimed that my garden is part of her land. When I called her out on her lies, she got into a bulldozer and destroyed my property. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. This whole incident happened to me recently and I've been told by friends to share it online, so I hope you guys enjoy it. My family and I live in a nice neighborhood and we have a lovely garden with various vegetables, herbs and flowers. My daughter Hannah owns a small online business selling handmade pottery and other clay items. She spent months saving up money to buy a kiln so that she could fire the items herself instead of using the one at her college. We basically transformed the garage into a workspace for her, which my husband and I were happy to do since she is so industrious and committed to her craft. And well, we have lived in the area for a handful of years now and have gotten to know the majority of the neighbors, even those that we don't get along with. One of our neighbors, Karen, has a tendency to snoop and always stick her nose where it doesn't belong. Her kids throw parties every weekend and play loud music in the backyard until late at night, which is a real pain in the butt for those of us who want to enjoy our days off and go to bed at a reasonable time. Complaining to them never yields any results, so we have learned to live with it. The few conversations I've had with Karen have been weird to say the least. She always manages to bring up property lines or money, which puts a bad taste in my mouth since I was told not to discuss those kinds of things with acquaintances. I often saw her eyeing our garden in a way I can only describe as jealousy, but she didn't seem to show any interest in gardening herself. After all, she had plenty of space for one in her own yard, but had not made any moves to start one. There was a neighborhood get-together at one of the houses on the street and it was a good relaxing time to get to know each other or catch up, since it is easy to forget to check in with people. The event was going well and then Karen came up to me while I was talking to someone else and interrupted to ask how much I was selling my house for. I was confused, as was the woman beside me, and I told her that I was not planning on selling my house anytime soon, as it still seemed like the perfect place to live, potentially for the rest of my life. She then proceeded to give me various offers and I laughed a little because I had begun to feel nervous. The whole thing was strange, but I was sure I had made it clear to her that no offer would convince me to move away. However, it didn't end here. She asked my husband the same thing at a later date and her daughter even got involved in trying to convince us to move and even went so far as to show us listings for other houses, all of which were uglier and in significantly worse neighborhoods, in hopes that we would see one we love. We could not exactly figure out why they wanted our land so badly, besides just wanting to expand their property, which seemed pointless when they could just move somewhere bigger if they wanted. Karen seemed to resent me for the fact that I was not budging on my decision, and she started doing little things to get back at me. I came out into my yard one day and saw that the fence separating our properties had been moved. I went to confront her and she tried to act like nothing was wrong, but my garden was now on her property, so clearly she had moved the border herself. I started to put it back while she shouted something at me having to do with her being entitled to my land, which did not even make sense. I told her not to touch the fence anymore and she just smirked and walked away from me, so I fixed the rest of the fence and went back to my home. Things were calm until one morning. A neighbor was having some construction done on their house and I was busy cleaning out the refrigerator when my daughter called to me from another room. I walked in to find her looking out the window and I followed her eyeline to see Karen in a bulldozer making her way to our property. Her husband owned a construction company, so she likely borrowed the machine from him. I watched as she edged closer to our fence and I felt unsure of what to do. Hannah asked if she should call the police and I said no because I was afraid it would only escalate the situation further. In the meantime, Karen had smashed through the fence separating our properties and crushed my garden under the treads of the machine. It pained me to see all my hard work destroyed in a single moment, but I kept myself together. Karen exited the machine and feigned as though she hadn't meant to smash the garden, and I just ignored her because I knew I would not be able to fully control my reaction in that moment. Later on that day, she had put up a new fence that completely changed the property lines of our houses, and I was lost when it came to what to do about her. I waited for my husband to get home so that we could discuss a game plan together. Although we had difficulty coming up with a solution, the next morning we were still brainstorming when Hannah ran into the room, speaking incoherently incoherently and quickly about something. I told her to slow down so we could understand her, and after taking a deep breath, she explained that her kiln was gone. We did not believe her at first because there would be no reason for someone to steal it, but when we went out to the garage, we saw that she was correct. It was in that moment that we remembered something that could end up solving all of our problems. We called the police to report the theft, and the officers listened as we explained that we believed Karen had stolen from us after destroying the part of our property. At this point, she had seen the cops arrive and had come out of her house in order to listen in on the conversation. When the officer approached her to ask about the bulldozer incident, she claimed I was lying in order to extend my property lines. It was at this point that I brought out the secret weapon. We had security cameras installed after Hannah bought her kiln, partially because they come in handy nowadays, and also because the kiln was closer to $2,000 and we didn't want to have to replace it. The cameras managed to not only pick up Karen destroying the fence with the bulldozer in my garden, but also caught her and her daughter sneaking into our garage and taking the kiln. There was not much to say and no real way for Karen to talk her way out of it. The evidence spoke for itself, and when the police asked if we wanted to press charges, we of course agreed without hesitation. Apparently, Karen was hoping to force us out of the neighborhood by being generally irritating and stealing from us until we found the area to be too dangerous to stay in. Her plan obviously backfired, and while I'm not sure the extent of the consequences for her, I know she won't be bothering us for a while. The update to the story: I got an update for you lovely Reddit people. Maybe you remember my story about my neighbor destroying my property with a bulldozer. Well, now, after time passed, I am happy to say that Karen is behind bars and might eventually end up in a mental hospital because clearly she had some mental issues. Good riddance. And you know, Ripe Stars, actually this story I wanted to post it a while ago because it was so interesting. However, there was no real ending and we never found out what actually happened to Karen. But thankfully, not long ago the OP posted an update on Reddit, so that is why I decided to post the entire story now. Next one is titled "Entitled Person Gets Revenged On." My girlfriend you, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that, is a concierge at a high-end Niagara Falls hotel. Lately, I've gotten in the habit of picking her up after work because of this, and I've had the pleasure of watching her deal with a-hole customers, and today was just so juicy I gotta share it. You was working the check-in desk that is part of her duty, so you can guess she deals with a lot of nutcases. I was just chilling in the lobby making googly I love you eyes at her while she was checking in a customer when this guy walks up to her and says "hey" to grab her attention. You said, "Sir, I will be with you in a moment after I finish checking this guest in." The guy did not like that answer and snapped his fingers in her face several times and said, "Hey little girl, I need help now." You gets this look in her eyes. Sometimes it's a look of pure sass and hate, and it's something I like about her. I think it's really sexy. You raises her hands and did exactly what the guy did. Snapped her fingers and said, "Hey little boy, I'm currently with a guest. You're gonna have to wait a few minutes for me to finish." The guy was in shock and shut his mouth and waited. Well, he got up to the front and went on a rant about how she treated him, that he's a premium customer, and you was in full smiles customer service mode. She looked up his booking and said, "So, you have the basic economy room today, sir." The guy decided to be pushy and said, "Well, you're gonna be upgrading me at no cost for the trouble." You said, "Unfortunately, that's not gonna happen. I can upgrade you, but there's gonna be an upcharge." The guy decided to be prickly and said, "Well, how would you like it if I cancel my booking?" You replied with, "So sir, you want to cancel your booking?" The guy does not know Hugh, and Hugh is spicy, another thing I love about her. The guy said, "Well, if you don't upgrade me now, how is that gonna make you look?" And you put on a worried face and said, "So if I don't upgrade you right now, you're gonna cancel?" And the guy said, "Yeah, that's right." You smiled and said, "Okay sir, I understand." You did something on the computer, looked up and smiled and said, "Okay sir, you're all fixed up, you're good to go. Have a nice day." The guy has this look of confusion on his face and said, "What?" You was, "Oh, I cancelled your booking." The guy was obviously not happy and realized that his dickish behavior is not gonna get him any free upgrades. The guy then gave up and said, "Fine, I will take my room." You goes back to her computer and looks up with a big smile to say, "Unfortunately, sir, we are fully booked for the night." You just smiled and told him to have a nice day. The dude full on got pissed and said he needs to speak to the manager. Once again, you replied with a smile and pointed to her name tag and said, "Oh sir, I'm the manager." The guy did not get anything he wanted, the guy did not get to stay in the hotel, and I got to watch my girl in action. Some side information, I'm very proud of you, she just got her promotion about a month ago, her drive always impresses me. And the next one is titled, Retail Karens are insane. So the store I work for has a very famous dress code, X color shirt matched with Y color pants. We are encouraged to put on a coat when we are on the floor during our breaks, but sometimes it does not matter. So I had clocked out for the day and I'm out on the floor with my jacket on, getting some cleaning supplies before I leave. I got a basket and my earbuds in. Of course, that does not matter to this customer. We will call her Karen, thanks to FU Karen subreddit. Karen comes up to me and says, "Hey, you work here, right?" I pretend to not hear her, what with my music and all, and say, "Excuse me, sir, I will not be ignored by an employee." Me, "I'm sorry?" I take out my earbuds trying to act casual. Karen, "You work here, right?" "I saw you out on the floor with a name tag." Me, "Yes, but I've clocked out for the day." If you have a question, I would be happy to quickly answer it, but other than that, I'm gonna have to ask you to respect my time and find another employee. Karen then assures me that she'll be quick and then explains to me a long, complicated situation involving a return she would like to make that requires communication with the manufacturer of the item. I give her a minute or two before I cut her off and tell her that her question should be directed to guest services and point her to the GS desk. Karen, "But you didn't let me finish." Me, "I can tell that your situation requires more than what I can do in a minute. Now, if you'll excuse me, I do need to go." Karen, "But your job is to service me." At this point, I am losing my patience with Karen and I think she knew this. Me, "Ma'am, I'm not on the job right now and I need to leave. Please direct your issue to guest services." As I say this, I can tell this is not gonna end well. Thankfully, I'm standing next to one of our in-store guest service phones. While I am still talking, I pick it up and punch in the code that tells our security to hop on over to that location. Karen, "How can you say that? You are giving me bad customer service. Whatever happened to the customer is always right? What if I told your manager about your behavior here? I bet your tune would change then, huh? Just because you're not on the clock does not mean you get to stop doing your job." This is when my favorite security guy, we will call him Jesse because that's his name, shows up. Jesse, "Hi. How can I help you?" Karen tries to say something, but I hold up my hand and she keeps quiet, startled I think. Me, "This guest here needs to go to the guest service counter and is having trouble getting there." Using the word trouble like I did is our code for "Get this witch out of my face, they are harassing me." Jesse, "I can absolutely help you with that, ma'am. I will walk you there." Karen does not put up a fight and I pick up my shower cleaner and go. My favorite part was her telling me that just because I was off the clock, it doesn't mean that I get to stop working. Like, Karen, that's exactly what it means. The next one is titled, Person Gets Kicked Out of Wedding. My husband and I, both 27, got married a few weeks ago and he obviously is still upset about it, but I don't think I was wrong, so I thought I would ask here. We only gave +1s to married couples or if we knew the SO well. My husband has one childhood friend that was coming from out of state to attend. I've met him a bunch of times, but only his girlfriend of 3 years a few times because of the distance. I did not want to give him a +1, but my husband begged since he was traveling and did not know anyone else at the wedding and he didn't want him to be uncomfortable or have to travel alone. I said fine, just to make him happy. Flash forward to the reception, I see him with some girl I've never seen before. I asked husband what was up and he told me that his friend and his girlfriend broke up a few days before the wedding and since he already RSVP'd as 2, he brought a friend with him. I was pissed since I made an exception for him and I didn't want anyone random at my wedding. I had one of my bridesmaids go to him and tell him he could stay, but can his date please go back to the hotel because this is a private event. He said okay and did not make a fuss, but he left with her and did not come back. I thought everything was fine and had a great night. My husband found out about it the next day and we got in an argument. He is mad because his friend traveled and I kick him out without talking to him. I did not kick him out, just his date. Now it's a few weeks later and my husband still brings it up from time to time and his friend has not been answering his texts. I kind of feel bad, but it was my wedding and I didn't want any strangers there. Comment number 1, you are the a-hole. What was the actual harm of this person being there at that point? And he had a +1 and it's unlikely he knew you gave him a dispensation on your special day. This comes off as power-hungry and controlling. You responded to perceived rudeness with the ultimate rudeness. You kicked someone out, which, come on, you knew her date was gonna follow, so you booted your husband's friend. You are a ginormous a-hole. You are the a-hole. Comment number 2. You gave him a +1 and he used it, and then you were rude and revoked it during the reception. His +1 did nothing wrong and was not causing a drunken scene or anything. And you got offended because she existed. Sorry, Bridezilla, but you're the a-hole. And yeah, my lovely viewers, let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think that OP is the a-hole here or not? I would love to hear your opinion in the comment section. Dear sir, please remove your fence. While retrieving my mail shortly after moving into my new home, there was a flyer attached to the mailbox post. I read the flyer with interest, finding that it was from the neighbor who purchased a model home at the entrance of our subdivision. And guys, you know, subdivision can usually only mean one thing in Reddit stories. We are dealing with an HOA. The flyer was addressed to all members of the Homeowners Association and essentially informed us that the HOA was using our HOA dues to sue him for not removing a fence from his front yard. The builder erected the chestnut rail fence around the front yard of the model home when it was built, and the purchaser never thought anything about it. A contingent of HOA officers notified him that he had 24 hours to remove the fence or face a lawsuit. Having already faced the wrath of the HOA himself, I stopped at his home to talk with him. After ascertaining the preceding information, I informed him that anything existing on the closing date of the real estate transfer was grandfathered in and therefore the fence was legal. I then proceeded to show this to him in the covenants. At the time I was an editor with the local newspaper and asked him if he minded me writing an article about this incident in the newspaper. He readily agreed and I went off to discuss it with the managing editor. Between us, we decided to run a series of articles about HOAs and the little Hitlers who run them, highlighting this incident. The series ran 7 weeks on the editorial page, during which time the court case was held and the homeowner won, with the HOA having to pay his legal expenses. He told me that had they asked, he would have removed the fence with no problem, but he was a retired colonel in the US Army and was not used to being ordered to do things. 36 years later, the fence is still there. And Ripe stars, obviously, the HOA has not read many Reddit stories before, because if they had, they would have known 2 things. First of all, never mess with a farmer, which obviously doesn't apply here, and the second one is never mess with a veteran. Things will end badly even if you run a totalitarian HOA regime. The next one is titled "Diss Us for Imperfect Lawns, Pride Goes Before the Fall." I lived in a suburb where lawn was a competitive sport. Half the neighborhood was folks like me, starting families busy with work and kids, and the other half was retirees or near retirees who took an inordinate pride in their lawn. We mostly got along except for 1 or 2 old cranky guys. One summer, we witnessed the ultimate prank. A bunch of neighborhood guys were standing around in cranky old guy's garage, just shooting the breeze. The COG kept going on about how great his lawn was, how young people took no pride in their houses, were probably lazy, etc. He went inside for something and a neighbor said, "Watch this." The neighbor lowered the wheels on one side of COG's lawnmower by a notch. We were puzzled more than amused and had no problems keeping a straight face when COG returned. We couldn't figure out why he had done that until a week later. And by the way guys, obviously COG means cranky old guy. Cranky old guy mowed his lawn every 3 or 4 days, and after the first mowing there was a very faint set of rows in the lawn. After the second, at a 90-degree angle to the first, there was a slight checkerboard pattern. The effect was very subtle and looked kind of cool, like a baseball diamond. Third and following mowings, however, when he retraced the first mowing, he didn't always hit the rows exactly, leading to pronounced lines on his lawn. He prided himself on having a lawn like a billiard table, so the flaws jumped out in his mind. This went on for weeks, and it wasn't until he took the mower in for a tune-up that he noticed the wheels were set differently. Best of all, he thought it was something he did and never suspected his neighbor. And guys, if you have any interesting neighbor stories to share, please feel free to share them either on r/ripestories on Reddit or here in the comments. Thank you so much, and while you're at it, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video as well. That would greatly help my channel. Thank you so much in advance.